Hello and welcome to this very important interview for the Sew Like a Pro series. As an introduction, our amazing speaker today, Susan Lazier, has a sensational presentation for us today on how you can actively express yourself through fashion in a sustainable manner. Sew Like a Pro, the future of fashion, is coming together of top names in the sewing industry. Now we're here to give you tips, insight, and the tools that you need so that you can move forward and expressing yourself through your own sewing and creativity of your wardrobe. Now, be sure to click the description box, or in the description box, the link to get access to all the episodes of this amazing show for free, happening between March 25th and April 8th. Now, Susan is a college professor in the field of fashion. She's also a designer and developer of pattern making software, and just for anyone who loves to create and make in the field of textiles. Now, Susan, thank you so much for joining us today and for speaking into this really important topic of what we need to know when it comes to fashion.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So let's dive right on into this amazing presentation that you have today. What does the fashion industry actually look like? And what does fashion actually mean?
So I'm going to be speaking from the viewpoint of sustainability. And the fashion industry, well, it's humongous, as you know, and the global industry is, like, depending on your definition of it, up to a $3 trillion business. And so it's huge. And the production of clothing since the year 2000 has doubled. So the speed at which clothing is being produced has changed greatly. So the industry is large. Now, as far as my definition of fashion, I would say that fashion is that which influences or dictates the clothing choices that we make. So sometimes it's a store window, sometimes it's Pinterest, sometimes it's vintage clothing, but we are being influenced by various things for the fashions that we wear.
Yeah, that is incredible that it has doubled since 2000. So it is a massive industry and it just keeps growing. So we talk a lot about sustainability more and more often these days. What does sustainability really mean?
Well, the United Nations had a commission that put forth what they call their definition of it. And they say that sustainability is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So basically, it's that we will be able to sustain for future generations our global world.
I love that definition. I think it really gets to the point. So what problems exist and what challenges sustainability in the fashion industry itself?
That's a big topic. I'll pick a couple because I'll be, talking about other ones, weaving in and out as we go along, I'm sure. One that I see as a big problem is just straight population growth. We are almost 8 billion people on this planet, and most of us wear clothes, so you can sense the volume that's involved. India is a good example of a high, heavy population. They're about 18% of the world's population, and they have 1.35 billion plus people. And so there's an image here I'm sharing. I took this photo on a Sunday afternoon in Chennai shopping. So you can imagine trying to walk down that street. But it was a good example of how dense the population can be. And a second item I'll probably pinpoint at this point is the challenges that we face with pollution. The industry of fashion is seen as a major polluter, and some say second, right behind the oil industry. Pollution is one of the biggest global killers. It affects over 100 million people, and that's comparable to global diseases like malaria and HIV. So there's actually a group called DoSomething.org, which is a movement of millions of young people who are trying to make a positive change online and off. So you might want to see what changes they're trying to put forth.
That's amazing. There's a great information just in that itself, and DoSomething.org. Definitely go check it out. Where do ethics sit in this current picture of fashion?
Well, ethics are, typically revolve from things such as child labor, long work hours, poor work conditions, low pay. It varies its severity according to where you are in the globe. It has a long history, back to the Industrial Revolution. Some statistics say that 1 in 6 people work at some level in the fashion industry. 80% of those people are women, and only 2% of them make a living wage. So that's kind of sad statement there.
Yeah, that's incredible. So we're already seeing just through this little snippet a great impact in every area of the globe, in ethics, in the amount of people just here, and in people involved in fashion. Like this, it impacts literally everyone, whether you're interested in fashion or not. This is something that you're participating in and is affecting you or somebody that you know in some major way. So what is the definition of fast fashion?
Fast fashion is, well, I would say speed plus low costs, resulting in a volume of goods. And so this is where the doubling of production comes in, because it used to be that companies put out 3-4 collections a year, and there was a time lag, and then the buyers ordered, and then it was produced, etc. Well, that's changed with the advent of fast fashion, and so now there's almost like 52 collections a year. They're producing in such a different way that buyers can just go straight to the marketplace and buy and bring home. Certainly up in LA, which is not too far from me, our students actually go up there and buy to sell things in a buying class. Companies like Zara, Forever 21, and H&M are good examples of those type of retailers. And I don't, but I also want to make a comment that many of those companies have programs in place for also trying to improve their sustainable practices. So, it's kind of a catch-22. The speed at which, in my mind, what it's resulted in is that fashion becomes disposable. You didn't spend a lot for it, so you're probably not feeling the need to hang on to it for a very long time. So I think that is partly what contributes to the problem that we have.
Definitely that not needing to, not really being connected to it, but also being of a cheaper quality, they doesn't last as long. Well, I jumped kind of ahead to that fast fashion. I'd love to kind of return back to what comments can you make really about more in depth on the safety of workers in these environments, in this incredibly fast pace, like 52 collections a year, like it's a never ending, like a continual pressure cooker, really.
Yeah, well, I think safety, of course, is an issue if the companies are providing a safe workspace and, a safe amount of hours that their employees are working too, because fatigue can enter into it. I think one of the scariest examples of safety being abused was the collapse of a factory in Bangladesh in 2013. It was a clothing production factory, the Rana Plaza factory, and it just collapsed. So 1,130 workers died, and of course more were injured. So, this again is not something new, because here in the United States, back in the early 1900s, we had a fire in New York, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, where women were locked in. And of course, when the fire broke out, they couldn't get out. But that had an indirect positive effect that it really helped the trade unions get some support for protecting people. So those are just a couple. There is a film called True Cost that you can watch if you want to learn more about the factory in Bangladesh. So it's like a documentary. So if you're interested.
Thank you for that. Yeah, they're sobering, but they're important things to be aware of. So when we look at how this is affecting really the environment a little bit more in depthly, you touched on this earlier. Can you share just a few statistics or comments on that?
Yeah, I'll pick two. I'm going to talk about the use of water because that is a major problem in our globe right now. Water is like a really challenged resource, and the fashion industry is an abuser. So cotton production, it just in making cotton by itself uses large amounts of water. A typical pair of blue jeans takes about 919 gallons to produce. A typical t-shirt takes 2,720 liters of water to produce. That's a UK statistic. The other fact I'll pick on is the use of chemical toxins. Fiber production is responsible for about 18% of the pesticides and 25% of the insecticides used in the world. And then, of course, there's also the problem of disposal of chemicals that are used in the production in tanneries, with dyeing houses and things like that. So the government's putting lots of pressure and things have definitely improved, but environmentally, those are my two biggies probably.
Now that is incredible. Something we don't think about, or I haven't thought about, is like really how much water that really is for just one t-shirt. And if we're making that t-shirt to be disposable to be just a few times, like what are we doing? And then once again, the process, just growing the fibers, is creating pollution. That's not to mention what's coming into the environment with the dyes, with the transportation of the garments, with the end disposal of these garments at the end, especially if they're synthetic fibers as well, and they don't even break down. So how do fibers play a part in and impact the fashion industry?
Well, there's, synthetics. Well, we know the challenges with even producing the fibers. And, it's kind of like, no matter what you pick, there's going to be a problem with the environment, even natural fibers, just because we've abused the environment for so long. But, and also it's just part of the flow. So we can't get rid of everything. We have to be realistic. Synthetic fibers have been around since the late 1930s. They're inexpensive to produce. And on the plus side, a lot of synthetic fibers use what would be considered waste products. So that's a good thing. Like, we're not just throwing out, that part of the oil or, natural gas or whatever the fiber is made from. So they're inexpensive to produce, and they can be made to look like a lot of natural fibers. But the one negative of synthetic fibers is that they can take 20 to 200 years to decompose. So if you're sending something off to the dump, just throwing it in the trash, and that's where it's going to end up, that could be what you're looking at for that to decompose. Whereas a natural fiber, will decompose quite quickly. But our goal is not to be sending them to the dump, and we can talk more about that coming up.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you have created this wonderful pledge card with practical application for us today. Like, this is wonderful information, as I mentioned, sobering information, definitely, but how can we really take a step and move forward together? And you've created this beautiful pledge card to help us really do that. So can you share it quickly with us?
Sure. So I like to play with words. So I came up with a series of R words that we can use to kind of employ. And I like this, I'll start this by saying, fashion and sustainability. A lot of people think that it's a big industry problem, and that's true. But I'm saying it's also an us problem, and we can play a role even in our own house, in our own space. And if enough of us do it, we can make a difference. So that's why, I would say, kind of soliciting soldiers to fight for the cause. So I have a whole series of R words. So my first one is reevaluate. Okay. And on the pledge card, which you'll find on my website, and we'll provide the link, you have little bullets on these. But basically, what I mean by reevaluate is go to your closet, make a date with the closet. And, by and large, they say that people wear 10% of their wardrobe in the closet 90% of the time. So that's kind of a sobering fact. And so really, you need to really examine that 10% and learn what it is about those clothes that are the reasons you love them and you have them, etc. But at the same time, you should probably look at the other 90% and determine like which ones would you never buy again and why. It's the why that's really important, because basically we're trying to change our purchasing habits. So understanding more about the clothing you already own is a real key factor to getting a good start on this.
That is so true. That is something that I always tell my students when they're thinking about sewing new garments is, what do you love? What are they made out of? What are the fabrics? What is the fit? What is the amount of ease? Looking at that, but looking again at that 90% that you don't wear, say, what is it about that why again? That is so key.
I'm going to jump in since we're a sewing and creative forum here. I think also, because I teach design and I teach pattern making, right? That 10% of your wardrobe is just dying to tell you things that you should know for how you plan a pattern and how you fit your clothes, because there's no sense reinventing the wheel. Don't trust the pattern. I mean, no one pattern can be perfect for everyone. So you might like more ease, you might like less ease, you might like high armholes, you might like low armholes. So that 10% of your wardrobe has that information there just waiting to be discovered. So use the knowledge you can gain by measuring off some of your favorite pieces to determine your personal fit preferences, your choice of fabrics, and you'll have much better success in creating clothing for yourself and in making wise choices so you love what you do.
Oh, totally. That is golden information right there. Hang on to that. Don't forget it. So rethinking our wardrobe or our habits is the next point on your card. Can you dive in?
So on this one, I'm saying, let's think about your purchase habits. Do you purchase with purpose, or are you shopping emotionally? Think about like what it is that motivates you to buy. Are you buying quantity or are you buying quality? And so maybe we need to move to quality instead. So Vivienne Westwood had a program, like a campaign going where she was saying buy quality, not quantity. So, here's a leader in our fashion world, right? An average garment is, some statistics say it's worn 4 times. Now, to me, that's a little scary. So
scary.
Do think about your habits, and I would push you. It's the same with fabric, making fabric choices for those of us who sew and create. I am much more moving into buying better fabrics instead of so many fabrics. Buying quality and making it count and loving the fabric. So if I'm choosing sometimes between this bargain and this one fabric I really like, I'll just get one fabric that I really love and it's more expensive than 2 other fabrics, because Lord knows I have enough fabric, but I'm trying to make it count so that what I make makes me happier.
Yeah, that's awesome too. And recycling rather than tossing.
Right. So recycling can take on many looks. And of course, what do you do with your clothes when you no longer want it? So there's our old standby of donating it to Salvation Army, Goodwill, etc. I think you might be surprised to learn that most of the donations, if you donate it to the right place, actually have a home. There was an article by an employee of Eileen, I think it was Eileen West, that said only 20% of your donations actually get to the store floor. But of the remaining, 45% is sold to secondhand dealers, 30% is cut up for rags and wipes, and 20% is shredded for industrial use, and 5% is waste. So, you know, I'm putting socks with holes in the Goodwill bag, because I realize those can go someplace else, you know, if they're a proper place and doing the proper sorting. It keeps it out of the landfill. And I think that's the goal. Also in recycling, you can be real creative about it. You can have, you know, how people have book swaps. Well, you could have clothing swaps. I have a friend who has a girlfriend party, and everybody comes and brings clothes that you're willing to part with, and they just open up, everybody dumps them on the floor, and you can walk around and go home with a new garment to you. But it's not, you know, it's being recycled in that way. And I think also buying secondhand, vintage is great. Secondhand stores are great. So it just keeps things out of the landfill, which I think is part of it.
Keeps them moving, keeps them. I love that clothing swap idea. That sounds like a good time. And I love too, I call them hand-me-ups. They're garments that I get from my younger sister rather than hand-me-downs. So I'm just like, she loves fashion as well, so I get a lot of those. But buying the secondhand is also key, and that's something that I always do, especially for my kids. They're growing so fast, but more than that, they're still small. So when they get older, I'll buy them new if they want it. But just the amount of chemicals that we don't realize are on brand new garments when they first arrive, from the growing, from the dyeing, from the shipping, it's like they're laden with chemicals by the time they get to us. So we need to wash them before we wear them, but allowing, like, those secondhand clothes are prime because they already are no longer carrying as much of that chemical load for us to absorb as the user. So
I'm going to swing it back to fabric again, since a lot of the audience here is that. I think you can make wise decisions sometimes too with fabric, because we are starting to see some fabrics that are made from recycled goods. So like there's a Polar Tech fabric that uses fibers that are called Retrieve, and they are made from recycled plastic bottles. So each yard of their fabric uses 16.75 recycled plastic bottles. So I think that's cool. You can see a picture here of a garment that I made. And so the body is made with Polar Tech. And then the sleeves I knit, and they were made from recycled silk saris. So they stripped them into strips and made them into yarn. And so I used yarn to knit the sleeves, and so I have my Polar Tech body and my recycled sleeves, and it was a fun project. So it's kind of a feel-good project when you do that.
Totally, that's a great application for recycling in really like easy ways. Well, we also have here, the next point is refashion, so upcycling clothing, and I feel like this is gaining momentum, great, beautiful momentum in the sewing world as well.
Right. And I have a lot of fun doing upcycling. In fact, at the college, I always have one project for the pattern making students when I was teaching pattern making, where they had to upcycle. That was just part of it. And then learning how to use your patterns and also just to upcycle. It was always fun to see what a student can make out of 3 men's dress shirts type of thing. So upcycling is like building something new. You'll see examples here. I've provided some images for you to look at of some upcycling projects I've done. Also on my blog, I have 2 or 3 different blog entries on upcycling. But the one in particular, there's a group up in Alameda, California, which is in the Bay Area, that invited me to join them. And we went to St. Vincent de Paul, and they gave us to their big depot center, like where everything comes in for sorting. And they gave us 30 minutes to go through all the whatevers. We were climbing in bins and whatnot. And with the understanding that whatever we took, we would upcycle into clothing. And so Joan's garage is just full of sorted garments that if you want denim, go to this box. If you want blues, go to that box. And then her group in her home, because she's got a lab set up, they upcycle. So it's really cool. So you can see the garment I did. I started with a template pattern, and then you see the clothes, my palette per se. I have 2 or 3 different sweaters, and I just started cutting and piecing to make them fit onto that pattern and template. And so I finished with a garment you can wear front to back or back to front, and it's completely upcycled. So it's a fun project.
Awesome. That's super cool. So many ideas out there if you just tap into them. So let's dive into the point on your card here, repairs.
So I think a lot of garments get tossed because a button comes off of it or there's a small hole. And so I would say, rather than go for a latte one day, go buy yourself a small little sewing kit and watch a few YouTube videos, and you can teach yourself how to do very simple repairs. And now if I'm speaking to a sewing audience, that's a whole, you're already beyond that, but, encourage your friends. But it's a small investment, and there's tons of videos that can help you with that. But all that being said, there is an art, as we call it now, called boro, which comes from Japan. It's very popular right now. But the Japanese word translates to ragged or tattered. And it started in the north of Japan, where the villagers were so poor that they didn't have money to replace their clothes. So they patched them. But when they did it with what I would say, they did it with soul. And so they would layer different layers of fabric, and then they would stitch it with a technique called sashiko, which is just a running stitch, and build layer upon layer to patch their garments and make them last. But it's turned into an art, and it's amazing. And so there's a lot of YouTube videos on how to do boro and books, etc. So it's just a creative way. When you get tired of the holes in your jeans, just borrow them, and make them into something beautiful. So there's no surprise. There's lots of tutorials. It's really quite a moving experience if you've never seen boro, and then you actually see a lot of samples of the original boro.
That's amazing. Yeah, with the heart and the soul, I can just feel that coming through in the technique and embracing these and the experience that it adds to our fashion, the soul that it adds to the garments that you're wearing. So when we move on then from there, we're looking at retaining.
So retaining, I was looking for a word I could use for the care of your clothes. And so retain seemed to fit the bill on that. So this is like the laundering and care. So a question I would ask is to all of you, how many times do you wear a pair of jeans before you wash them? On average, most Americans wash their jeans after 2.3 wearings. But Levi Strauss, of course, who is a blue jean manufacturer out of the San Francisco area, actually has a campaign that they're sponsoring where they're trying to encourage Americans to stretch that 2.3 wearings up to 10. And if you could wear garments 10 times before you wash them, and I'm talking jeans in this case, you can reduce the water usage by 77%. So denim is, when I teach textiles, I always told my students, denim is a miracle fabric, okay? There are 2 reasons. One, you can wear them for a week and they never look dirty. How is that? And also, why is it that when you take them out and put them on the first time, you have to lay on the bed to zip them up, and then within a day, they're loose again? So that's just part of the tool weave of denim. But anyhow, I think the bottom line here is how often we launder. I now hang certain clothes that I've worn once, but they're not really dirty, in a certain part of my closet, which is reminding me, wear this again before you launder it. So that's one way I'm trying to get that practice built in. And then the other thing about care is, I just will bring it up, polyester, the microfibers. There has been concern that when you wash microfiber fabric clothing, that some of the fibers are going out into the water and going out into the ocean, and they're causing problems with sea life. So there was even an act that was brought up in California here, being proposed to the California State Assembly to require that people wash their polyester by hand. But it never made it very far. But I think the bottom line is, once again, if you can reduce how many times or increase the number of times you wear something before you actually launder it, that is another way of minimizing how much goes out in waste in water. And then, of course, read your care labels, because you can, do that. And I've developed the European method of care in that I don't put a lot of things in the dryer anymore. I hang them or I put them on a clothing rack. Most Europeans I know don't even own a dryer. So it's just not part of their vocabulary.
Yeah, it's definitely true. We can get a little bit away from that needing everything done as fast as possible and thinking about the effect, not only the microfibers going out in the ocean that are then affecting so many things, but also the longevity of our garments, how new our garments look. The less we wash them or the less we dry them specifically, they will look newer, they won't get pilly as quickly, and we'll be able to wear them for an extended period of time before they even need a repair, before they even start to look old. So that is a key point. It sounds super easy, but taking that seriously in laundering less and caring for the actual garments is a big step that each and every one of us can take.
And also the less dry cleaning. So, I haven't had maybe more than 1 or 2 garments to the cleaners in the last 10 or 15 years because I don't put them in the dryer. And it keeps the life of them going longer. So I'll wash silks and I'll wash wools. They do not need to be dry cleaned. I just treat them in the manner that you need to treat protein fibers. You don't hang them to dry, you lay them flat to dry. You roll them in a towel or whatever you need, but try not to use the chemicals of most dry cleaners. There are some green cleaners, but that is another way.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so reverse. Okay,
reverse. Okay.
Reverse.
So, we have fast fashion, but maybe we need to think about trying to get more slow fashion. Just like there's a slow food movement, we can have a slow fashion movement. So this to me means more like buying American, buying better quality. If you can buy local, even better. Support the indie designers, pay a little more. And that's often what it comes down to. Be willing to pay a little more to make the right decision, and support the American manufacturer and with better made American products, and have less clothes. So it all just, that will cut down how fast we're getting rid of things and how fast the industry needs to move. Basically, you can reverse the speed of fashion by buying less, buying quality, buying locally, and at the very least, American made. So the bottom line is just make your purchases count.
Yeah, whether it's already made fabric or garments or the fabric itself that you're making,
exactly.
Your flow fashion out of. And every area of actually making a purchase, make those purchases count. So that brings us right to the very end, the last point here, and the reward.
So I also think that we're not going to stop buying clothes because, well, if you're like me, you still love clothing, right? And you can't spend all day sewing or knitting. So there are manufacturers who have risen more in the limelight to show that they actually do care. So some examples are Nike, who has people turn in their old Nike shoes and they shred them and use them to build a sublayer of flooring. Tom Shoes, their new program, at least the last time I looked, was they'll give $1 for every $3 profit to a good charity. Patagonia has worn wear program and a fix it from home program. And I think it's Eileen Fisher, I hope I have that right, has Renew Resewn. So you can go onto her site and people can bring their Eileen Fisher garments into the stores, and then they reconstruct and sell novelty items on their website. So it's kind of interesting to go. You might get some ideas for upcycling there too. But and there's lots of other companies who support. And I think if you are involved in some of these sustainable conferences and listening to guest speakers, you'll see that a lot of other companies have developed policies where they're watching their chain, that the people who are doing production for them are doing sustainable practices, so that they're really being responsible. So really, this is, like I said, not a large company philosophy, it's a you philosophy, and you can do it, right?
Yeah, and we are all rewarded by every effort we make to shift together. Well, thank you so much. You have also on the back of your card more resources. Did you want to mention a couple of those?
Well, some of them are just websites. So greenpeace.org is good. I'll put these on that same webpage. There's a company out of England called Fashion Revolution. And by the way, in April, there's two things coming up. Fashion Revolution always has like a campaign that they run at the end of April, as is Earth Day is at the end of April. So like April's the month to like really say, okay, this is my month. This is what I'm going to do. Sustainable Fashion Matters with a Z.com is another. And I think I already mentioned DoSomething.org. And there's other ones I'll be sticking up on my blog that I ran into some that if you want statistics to make you feel like you need to do this, there are some good companies out of New York who are posting about some of the statistics of our industry.
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot of statistics to realize that something gets to happen here, and it gets to happen right now. And all of these steps, your card, thank you so much for sharing it. And we'll once again have the link below this video so you can go and get a copy, get more inspiration, see the websites, take action yourself, and move forward together. And together we can make a massive difference. So thank you so much for all of your wisdom that you've shared with us today, Susan. I'm so excited to have you again on Sew Like a Pro for another exciting episode, designing clothes sustainably and creatively with the peace approach. So we get to learn more about what you do with designing and connect with you there. So thanks again for joining us, and definitely go sign up for the show right now if you're not already signed up for Sew Like a Pro, as you will not want to miss Susan's second episode and connecting with her more, and all of the other amazing speakers we have on the show. They all have amazing things to give you to help you move forward in your sewing, in your technique, in your skills, and move fashion forward sustainably. So thanks again, Susan, for joining us. Yeah, and go. Let's all band together and drive this change.